7 Johnny Carson guests who completely lost it on live TV for 3 decades. Johnny Carson was the nation's beloved late-night host. Beneath his friendly grin and relaxed style, though, was a perfectionist who insisted on total command of his show. Most stars knew the unspoken guidelines of The Tonight Show. Stay entertaining, stay charming, but always let Johnny steer the conversation. Yet some guests utterly misjudged the situation. They showed up to plug films, records, or themselves, but, driven by alcohol, oversized egos, or plain bad judgment, they stepped over the hidden boundary that divided fun from outright shock. What makes these breakdowns so captivating isn't simply the train-wreck appeal of watching celebrities fall apart on national TV. It's Carson's skillful efforts to keep everything on track, the forced smile that didn't reach his eyes, the quick look to Ed McMahon for help, the frantic bids to rescue a segment slipping out of control. While thousands of stars had ordinary chats on Carson's couch, these 7 produced moments so awkward, so rule-breaking, and so out of step with the show's polished vibe that they've gone down as classics in late-night lore. From a legendary actress who turned a promo spot into a full-blown shouting match, to a famous comic who crashed the show without warning, to a superstar singer who left America's coolest host clearly rattled, these are the guests who didn't merely test Carson's patience. They trampled it while the country watched in disbelief. Let's start with the Queen of Provocation herself, whose 1987 visit swapped Carson's classy humor for something far steamier than NBC's censors were ready for. If I went into a lingerie shop and wanted to buy one of those for somebody, come on, not for me, but for somebody they'd probably, what would I call it? I mean, it's called a bustier. Number 1. Madonna, the material girl gets way too material. When Madonna appeared on The Tonight Show in 1987, she wasn't yet the worldwide superstar she'd soon become. But she was already famous for breaking rules. Fresh off her Who's That Girl tour, she arrived expecting to stir things up. Carson and his team hoped for a fun yet polished interview. They got the opposite. Madonna stepped out in what could kindly be called lingerie-style clothing, black lace, fishnet stockings, and a bold attitude that screamed she wasn't following Carson's playbook. The moment she sat down, she shifted from guest to challenger. An NBC page who was there that night remembered the studio falling dead quiet when she emerged. This wasn't normal Tonight Show fashion. This was Madonna dragging her stage persona into late-night TV, and you could sense the producers starting to sweat. Instead of joining Carson's usual light back and forth, Madonna seized control, flirting boldly, dropping suggestive remarks, and deliberately touching on sexual and religious topics still off-limits for network TV in the 80s. When Carson tried his signature subtle double entendre, Madonna fired back with blunt comments that left him hunting for a safe redirect. His famous cool cracked several times as she alluded to her personal life in ways that had censors ready to hit the delay button. Johnny laughed, but he never asked her back. A longtime producer later said, off camera during breaks, Carson wasn't mad, he rarely showed anger, but he was clearly irritated that she'd taken over and forced him into the rare role of trying to dial things down. Younger viewers loved her defiance. Older ones were stunned by her disregard for late-night standards. No one argued she'd delivered exactly the scandalous moment she wanted, using Carson's massive platform while ignoring its usual tone. The appearance cemented Madonna's rebel image but ended her connection with Carson. Despite countless hits and movies in the years that followed, she never sat on his couch again, one of the few huge stars of that era quietly barred, not for saying too little, but for saying far too much. Number 2. Don Rickles. The night the insult king went too far, Don Rickles and Johnny Carson shared one of late night's greatest friendships. Rickles was a regular whose visits followed a cherished routine. He'd roast Carson relentlessly, Johnny would laugh hardest of all, and the audience adored their chemistry. But one notorious evening in 1976, Rickles broke more than jokes. He damaged an actual piece of Tonight Show history. The problem started the night before during Rickles' booked appearance. While Carson stepped off stage briefly, Rickles sat in the host's chair, common during breaks. What wasn't common was Rickles accidentally snapping the lid of Carson's cherished cigarette box, a longtime gift from NBC. The next day, with Rickles not scheduled but shooting his sitcom Sipo Sharkey on a nearby lot, Carson held up the broken box on air and jokingly griped about Rickles' clumsiness. What followed stunned even veteran staff. Without warning or invitation, Rickles stormed onto the set in full Navy uniform from his show, crashing Carson's segment live. For several minutes, America watched an unplanned, unscripted Rickles takeover. It was hilarious until it stopped being hilarious, a cameraman later recalled. At first, everyone laughed. The surprise entrance, the costume, the fast insults. But then you saw Johnny's face change. Rickles wasn't just doing his act, he was genuinely commandeering the program. Rickles didn't merely interrupt, he dominated, grabbing the desk, yelling across the stage, and unleashing insults sharper than his usual playful digs. Carson kept smiling and playing along on air, but backstage crew said he was truly upset about the overstep. Johnny guarded the show's structure fiercely, a former producer explained. Even with close friends like Rickles, boundaries existed. Barging on uninvited in costume and running the show wasn't breaking the fourth wall, it was tearing down the whole building. The moment became legendary because viewers rarely saw Carson briefly lose command of his own stage. Though the two stayed friends, insiders noted Carson was noticeably cooler toward Rickles for months, a quiet but significant response from TV's most composed host. That it came from Rickles, one of Carson's closest regulars rather than some edgy newcomer, made it especially striking. It proved that even the coziest late-night bonds had limits not to cross on live TV. Number 3. Oliver Reed, the interview that became a warning. British actor Oliver Reed already had a wild reputation and a known drinking problem long before his 1975 Tonight Show visit. Promoting Royal Flash, few could have foreseen how badly the segment would collapse. From the second Reed appeared, trouble was obvious. He walked unsteadily, eyes glassy, and when he sat next to Carson, crew members later said the alcohol smell was strong enough to notice from yards away. He came to promote a film and ended up damaging his own career. A staffer who saw it said, "We'd handled tipsy guests before, but Reed was in a different league. You could tell Johnny knew right away he had a problem." Carson tried steering standard promo questions, but Reed's answers quickly turned incoherent. He slurred heavily, cut Carson off constantly, and grew hostile when Johnny attempted to guide him back. What made it especially painful was Reed's wild mood swings, 1 second charming, the next combative. He bounced between rambling unrelated stories and suddenly firing aggressive questions that shattered the show's normal flow. Carson was masterful with tough guests, but even he had boundaries, a longtime NBC exec noted. You watched him thinking on the fly, how long can this go? How do I end it without worsening things? It was like seeing a chess grandmaster stuck in an unwinnable position. Audience laughter at Reed's odd behavior turned to uneasy giggles. Then silence as everyone realized this wasn't quirky, it was troubling. Carson finally ended the segment early, a rare step for a host who prided himself on never embarrassing guests, no matter what. Afterward, he reportedly told producers, "Let's not repeat that." For Reed, already fighting to break into Hollywood, the appearance killed his American prospects. Studios wary of his reputation now had video proof of the risk. The clip remains both industry legend and cautionary tale, a reminder that even the tightest TV setting can fall apart when a guest shows up unable to meet basic expectations. Number 4. Truman Capote. From literary icon to late-night disaster, when acclaimed author Truman Capote appeared in 1980, he carried both genius and personal struggles. By then deep into substance issues that would later claim his life, his condition became heartbreakingly clear during a painful interview with Carson. From the instant he sat down, something was off. speech slurred, movements jerky, thoughts scattered. Carson, an admirer of writers, tried hard to draw out coherent discussion, but Capote seemed intent on derailing every question. From literary star to late-night mess, a Carson writer later said. Johnny respected Capote's talent and wanted to showcase it. Instead, we saw a man barely able to form sentences, making stranger and stranger remarks that had the control room on edge. Capote kept veering into provocative topics, odd, improper comments on politics and sexuality that clashed with the show's family-friendly rules. Carson repeatedly tried shifting to safer ground, only for Capote to circle back. Viewers expecting sharp literary chat instead got something almost surreal. Capote rambling, flashing brief moments of his old brilliance before sinking into nonsense. Carson stayed remarkably patient, a cameraman recalled. With most impaired guests, he'd wrap early, but he kept hoping Capote would suddenly sharpen up. It never happened. Though Carson never criticized him publicly, Capote wasn't invited back, a notable choice from a host who usually offered second chances to struggling stars. The appearance was a sad marker of Capote's decline, giving America a raw look at how far the once brilliant mind had slipped. For fans who remembered his earlier witty Carson visits, the contrast between past sparkle and present confusion was devastating. The segment endures as one of late night's most uneasy yet gripping moments, a fleeting view of a great writer's private battle, broadcast live to a nation watching in quiet pity. Number 5. Shelley Winters, a storm in a dress. Oscar winner Shelley Winters guested many times across Carson's run, each visit unpredictable. But one night stands out when she turned a routine panel chat into a screaming confrontation that even rattled Carson. Winters was famous for high energy and dominating talks, but this evening she arrived loaded with complaints and zero restraint. What started as normal banter exploded when another guest, accounts differ on who, said something Winters took as an insult. She didn't just react, she demolished the segment. A producer recalled. One moment it was lively conversation. The next Shelley was on her feet, jabbing fingers, turning the set into something you never saw on Carson's stage. Winters unleashed a loud tirade, hitting not only the other guest, but Hollywood's treatment of older actresses and long-held grudges. The audience, used to Carson's gentle vibe, went silent in shock. Carson's visible irritation was rare, his usual calm cracked. He normally handled chaos with jokes and gentle nudges, but Winters pushed him to where even his famous patience thinned. Johnny had a sign when truly annoyed, he'd shuffle papers and glance at Ed, a staffer said. During Shelley's outburst, he was practically folding those cards into origami. It was his silent cry for rescue. After failed calming attempts, Carson used his last resort, calling an early commercial, the nuclear button for an out-of-control segment. When they returned, Winters had settled a bit, but tension lingered. Backstage, Carson reportedly told producers to space out her next booking, code for a timeout. Remarkably, despite this and other wild visits, Winters kept getting invited. Proof of her star power and Carson's acceptance that sometimes explosive unpredictability created unforgettable TV even when it crossed lines. Carson once called her a force of nature you can't control, you can only point her. A TV historian noted. That night she was completely unguided and tearing across his perfect set. Pure, uncomfortable reality on television. Number 6. Buddy Hackett. When the funny man got serious, comedian Buddy Hackett was one of Carson's most dependable guests. A master storyteller whose lively tales and big laugh made him a Tonight Show staple. Visits usually went the same joyful way. Hackett sat, Carson gave a light prompt, and hilarious long stories followed. But one night in the mid-1970s, something shifted. Hackett arrived bothered by private issues, and what began as typical comedy veered into dark territory. Even Johnny's poker face slipped, an NBC page present said. Hackett started normally, then launched into a bitter rant about Hollywood people he felt had betrayed him. It wasn't comedic anger. It was real and deeply personal. The discomfort came from breaking the silent agreement with comic guests: entertain, stay funny, don't settle scores on air. As Hackett named specific producers and executives he called fakes and traitors, Carson's look went from amused to worried to uneasy. Audience laughter, usually steady for Hackett, turned spotty, then silent as his complaints grew sharper. Carson tried multiple redirects to lighter topics or upcoming work, a staff writer remembered. But Hackett was set on venting. It felt like watching someone turn a comedy spot into raw therapy, authentic, but totally wrong for the show. After several failed steers, Carson cut to commercial early. Another sign the segment had gone too far. Backstage, Carson was more puzzled than mad, genuinely worried about Hackett while frustrated a reliable guest had shattered format. "Something's bothering Buddy," he reportedly told a producer. "Let's check on him before booking again." That it happened with trusted regular Hackett, not some risky newcomer, made it notable. It showed how fast even solid relationships could crack live when personal troubles spilled over. Hackett later returned in better form, but the episode stayed a reminder of how quickly Carson's controlled world could change when a guest ignored the rules. Number 7. Red Fox, the walk-off that made history. By 1975, comedian Red Fox was already a TV star thanks to Sanford and Son. What should have been routine promotion turned into one of the shortest, most memorable guest spots ever when Foxx left the stage after barely 2 minutes. Trouble started before he even sat. A chain smoker used to lighting up off-camera, Foxx assumed he could smoke on air, as had been normal in earlier TV days. By 1975, NBC had banned it. One question, one explosion, one legendary exit, a production assistant said. Foxx came out, traded brief hellos, then asked to smoke. Told no. His mood flipped instantly. Viewers saw a stunningly quick escalation. Carson politely explained the rule. Foxx grew upset, said he couldn't talk without a cigarette. Thinking it was a bit, Carson chuckled and tried to proceed. Foxx was serious. He stood, announced he couldn't do the interview, and walked off, leaving Carson alone on stage with a mix of shock, confusion, and realization this was no joke. Carson later called it the briefest appearance in Tonight Show history, an NBC exec noted. The shock wasn't just the exit, but how fast normal turned chaotic. No build-up, just sudden breakdown. Carson recovered fast with a quip and moved on, but backstage he was truly surprised. He rarely took things personally, yet the public challenge to his authority stood out. Fox's team quickly apologized, blaming a misunderstanding and impulse. Carson publicly played it light in later shows, but the professional rapport suffered. Foxx returned years later, a historian said, but a subtle strain remained, both men mindful of that rupture, creating careful politeness unlike Carson's easy warmth with favorites. The moment lives in Tonight Show legend as proof that even minor mix-ups plus strong personality can shatter TV's polished facade live, delivering rare, genuine surprise in a usually scripted world. The man behind the desk, control meets chaos. These 7 wild episodes reveal more than stars misbehaving. They offer rare peeks at the iron grip Johnny Carson kept on his empire and what happened on the rare occasions it slipped. For 30 years, Carson built a space where guests felt relaxed, yet guided. His gift was making tough hosting seem effortless, creating the sense of casual chat while actually directing tightly crafted segments to highlight guests at their best and preserve the show's steady feel. When stars like Madonna or Rickles upset that balance, deliberately or impulsively, viewers saw something uncommon in Carson's realm: real surprise. These moments stand out because they were exceptions in a program famous for smooth reliability. Most telling is Carson's reaction. Unlike today's hosts who might amplify awkwardness for viral buzz, Carson came from an era valuing professionalism above all. Facing true trouble, he aimed to shield the guest even at their worst, protect the show's dignity, and restore calm fast. Carson saw himself as the audience's champion. A former producer said, if a guest entertained, he gave space. If they made viewers uneasy, he stepped in, not to fuel drama, but to diffuse it. The reverse of many modern approaches. That instinct covered even disruptive guests. Carson rarely issued permanent bans, Madonna an exception. And most got another shot, often after cooling off and stricter vetting. The Tonight Show ran on an unspoken code both host and guests knew: entertain, be real to a degree, but always prioritize enjoyable TV over shock. When guests broke that code, the tension produced some of the show's most unforgettable minutes. Not because Carson sought them, but because he worked so hard to prevent them. In today's splintered media world, where outrageous behavior equals online gold, Carson's style feels old-fashioned. He wasn't chasing viral clips or controversy. He was crafting a nightly ritual to soothe America before bed year after year. The few times that polished surface cracked, Red Foxx storming off, Oliver Reed slurring, Shelley Winters raging, shine in his 3-decade run precisely because they were outliers against his incredible consistency. They capture the brief instances when television's most controlled kingdom briefly bowed to raw human unpredictability, producing accidental truth in a format usually built on careful illusion.